In a culture shaped by constant pressure, rapid change, and competing demands, health advice has become increasingly complex, contradictory, and difficult to trust. Recommendations shift, trends rotate, and broad solutions are repeatedly applied to bodies with vastly different needs. When the rules never settle, outcomes become a matter of adaptation rather than stability. Despite consistent effort, millions remain stuck, dealing with weight challenges, chronic inflammation, autoimmune issues, metabolic dysfunction, and mental burnout. This reflects not a lack of commitment, but a system that asks for continual adjustment while overlooking the biological foundations of regulation, recovery, and resilience. This town hall returns the focus to biological reality. Dr. Shawn Baker, author of The Carnivore Diet, examines why chronic health issues persist and how the carnivore diet's radically simple, nutrient-dense framework restores physical and metabolic health. Dr. Richard Amerling, board-certified in internal medicine and nephrology, adds clinical insight into inflammation, insulin resistance, and digestion, and how reducing dietary overload allows systems to stabilize. Dr. Simone Gold, physician, attorney, and founder of GoldCare, leads a clear-eyed discussion that brings health back to first principles. Together, they explore how metabolic health influences the body, the mind, and the spirit. What follows revisits long-held assumptions about nutrition and shows what often changes when complexity is removed. GoldCare, built for you, powered by freedom, trusted by thousands.
Welcome to GoldCare Medical Town Hall, and thank you so much for being here tonight. I'm Drew Kachurik. Joining us tonight is Dr. Shawn Baker. He's a leading voice in metabolic and performance-based nutrition. Dr. Baker explores how a radically simple animal-based diet can reduce inflammation, restore physical function, and unlock strength, mental clarity, and vitality. Also with us is Dr. Richard Amerling. He brings a clinical and patient-centered perspective. Dr. Amerling connects real-world outcomes with metabolic health, helping individuals understand how nutritional simplicity can support healing, resilience, and sustainable wellness. Our moderator tonight is Dr. Simone Gold, founder and CEO of GoldCare Health and Wellness. If you're like me and you're tired of nutrition advice that promises transformation but delivers confusing and burnout, then tonight's conversation is exactly what you're looking for. Trends followed by frustration, plans followed by disappointment. This isn't your fault. It's the result of a system built on conflicting guidance and one-size-fits-all solutions that work against biological reality instead of supporting it. We'll explore how a carnivore-based approach can restore physical strength, mental clarity, and metabolic health, creating real lasting vitality rooted in clarity, confidence, and purpose. One of the most common questions we get with our live events is, how can we see this content again? The answer is simple. Just join GoldCare. The link you see on your screen, which is goldcare.com/drgold, gets you 30 days of free access to our platform. You can watch this town hall and hundreds of other videos packed with amazing speakers and educational content. Next up is our moderator, Dr. Simone Gold.
Hello, everybody. It is great to be here. It is great to have our guests here with us today, Dr. Amerling, of course, and we welcome Dr. Shawn Baker. I've been looking forward to tonight because one of the myths I like to break at GoldCare is that every doctor knows everything that the patient might want to know. That is not true. There are experts out there. Some know more, some know less. And this is an area that I have only modest knowledge on. That's why we welcome other people to this platform. Some of you who are on tonight were on, I guess it was about a month ago, when we did a different topic relating to nutrition. And we do this because we want to present all the information to you so you, the patient, the person most invested in your well-being, can decide what's best for you. I found Dr. Baker's work to be very compelling, and I think you'll be very interested to hear what he has to say. It's up to you to decide what is best for yourself, of course. So we will dive right into it, and we will have mainly Dr. Baker and Dr. Amerling doing most of the talking today. So, Dr. Baker, this is a little aside. You must have gotten a little chuckle when the food pyramid just was flipped, right?
Yeah. I think that was. I think it was. Like people say, it's like a South Park episode. I mean, it was done intentionally. I think what was represented visually was very symbolic, and intentionally they flipped it upside down because, the concern was we had this grain-based pyramid in the 90s, which everybody sort of, kind of bought into that. And this is actually flipping upside down. And, the funny thing is the first item of food you come to on that food pyramid is what is a ribeye steak, which is, also very intentional. It's not only just a piece of red meat, it's a very fatty piece of red meat. So I think that was probably, Secretary Kennedy's hand in that, because that is what he has sort of professed, that he's eating, quote unquote, essentially a carnivore diet. And I think that's made it in there. And it's, the interesting thing is, and a lot of people, you see the experts, the quote unquote experts decrying this new food pyramid, how heavily it, focuses on animal-based foods. And they're saying, well, various influencers had undue influence on this. But the reality is, I think people themselves have seen that this has not worked for them for whatever reasons. And these other things seem to be working more, more realistically. So we're kind of maybe, sort of realizing that our evidence-based medicine system is flawed, and that where's the evidence coming from? Is the evidence really that gold standard evidence, or do we go with what the results are? Because, I was kind of a blank slate going into this, and then I just saw results after results after results after results. And I was like, after a certain point, it's hard to deny this stuff. So yes, it's pleasantly surprising. But like most Americans, none of us walk around the supermarket with a dietary guidelines in our hands. I mean, we kind of just pick what looks good, what tastes good, and what's cheap. And so the real challenge will be educating enough people and getting that message out there. Kind of like we did during COVID, where every human on planet Earth knew you had to stand 6 feet away and wear a mask. That level of messaging needs to be, with the same amount of effort and resource, needs to be going to this sort of message around metabolic health and nutrition.
So I actually just forgive me, because I think I jumped in a little like too fast. I was just kind of trying to crack a joke, and I wasn't really prepping you. I want the audience to kind of understand your perspective, where you come from, a little bit more of an introduction. You did write the book, The Carnivore Diet. You and I met a couple of years ago at an event, at a medical freedom event, and you are good colleagues and friends with Dr. Amerling. And certainly I can attest for the audience that I've known many people who've done a carnivore diet who feel fantastic. That's a fact that you really can't deny. I mean, you're one of them, but I know many others as well. So if you could just share with the audience, a little bit about you, why you came to this, because you have a bit of an unusual background.
Yeah, sure. So my training is in orthopedics. And so I was a, conventionally trained orthopedic surgeon doing conventional orthopedics, lots of hips and knee replacements and fixing broken bones and doing sports medicine. I spent some time as a trauma surgeon, deployed to Afghanistan when I was in the military. And I was kind of motoring along. And then I was concerned about my own health, because I was in my 40s, not feeling as good as I should. So I started playing around with various dietary strategies, started falling into a low carb dietary pattern, which really was successful for myself. And at that time, we had a lot of patients we always have a lot of patients, a lot of obese patients needing knee replacements. And as a community, we said, hey, we need to get these patients to lose weight before we bring them to the OR, so we can reduce their complication rates. And I, because there was no sort of guidance, there wasn't like, well, this is how you do it. It was just figure out how to get your patients to lose weight. And so because I was pursuing at that time, a ketogenic diet, I was putting some of my patients on that, the ones that would do it. And surprisingly, many of them who I had on the OR schedule because they had bad arthritis, both radiographically and clinically, came back and said their knee doesn't hurt anymore. And so let's delay the surgery or cancel the surgery. And so that's what got me sort of interested in this in the first place. And then I kind of discovered these really kind of crazy people eating nothing but meat, which I thought was absolutely insane. And it still, it seems that way to a lot of people, but they're clearly getting results. And, as physicians, I think our goal should be to get sick people healthy, by some mechanism. Now, some of us like to, just prescribe medications to sort of disease manage them. And I think there's better things we can do for sure. And I think this is hopefully where at least some of us are going in medicine.
Dr. Amerling, you are a big fan of the carnivore diet. I know, because you and I have talked about it a lot. And also you have tremendous expertise as an academic physician, internist, and nephrologist in metabolic health and metabolic syndrome and all of that. So that, I think, is what led you, correct, to your advocacy for a carnivore diet.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm carnivore light, I would say. But yes, I started to get into the low carb diet, similar to Dr. Baker, way back in around 2000, almost accidentally. And I found that I lost about 15 pounds pretty readily on the Atkins diet. And I started to apply it to my diabetic patients. And lo and behold, I was able to get them off their medications and in some instances totally reverse their type 2 diabetes. And this is like 2001, 2002. And I used to rail against guidelines in medicine, and still do, of course. And the mother of all guidelines were the dietary guidelines for Americans. These were pushed out around 1979, 1980, led to the production of this food pyramid. And I remember I used to show a slide in my lectures of the food pyramid. And I would point out that if you follow this guideline, you will become obese and metabolically unhealthy. And what you should do is turn the pyramid upside down. So that's how I came into it. And the beauty of carnivore is that it's very simple. It's a complete elimination diet. You're getting rid of lots of potential toxins, irritants, allergens that could be in your diet that are causing you to have poor gut health, for example. It completely eliminates the vegetable seed oils, which I think are the major factor in the decline of American health, and cuts way, way down on sugar. And it is, in fact, a keto diet. If you follow a carnivore diet, you're going to be making ketones, and ketones are healthy. In fact, ketosis, I believe, is our default condition. This is how we should all be living. Saying that, I don't want to give the impression that we are pushing any one particular diet at GoldCare, because I've already gotten some feedback about this. And our goal is to educate people, give them what we consider to be good scientific information, and let them decide. There is no one-size-fits-all diet, that's for sure.
Yeah, thanks for emphasizing that. Right. I know we can't please all the people all the time. And that's why I started out by saying that we're here to give you amazing information. But we also don't shy away from the truth. And it clearly seems beneficial to reduce the carbs in your diet. Absolutely go for periods where you're not eating. So you go more into ketosis. And why don't we, and I guess I'll just say the basic stuff that most people know, but maybe not everybody. There's really only 3 forms of fuel for the body, right? There's carbohydrates, there's fat, and there's protein. So everything you're eating is one of those 3 categories. And anybody who was born in the 60s or 70s or 80s absolutely grew up in an era when parents were taught by their doctors and the government to be heavy on the grains. And by the way, I write about this from a policy perspective. There was a lot of political shenanigans behind the scenes, farmers getting subsidies for this. So there's a lot to the story. When you follow the money, it's quite discouraging when you learn this. So the food pyramid comes out. Everybody in America, we switched from bacon and eggs in the morning to cereal in the morning, bagels in the morning, and that was just kind of normal. And Dr. Amerling and I have spoken often that we also switched to a society that eats, very, very, very frequently. Every 2 hours you bring a kid to a soccer game and you have to bring them snacks. So everything really kind of changed from how it probably was historically, which is we ate rarely and we ate whole foods and probably were heavy on the not on the carbs, right? Not on the carbs. So it's all kind of switched. So we're here to bring you that kind of information. We also live in a time when doctors are not necessarily speaking biological truth. And I'm glad that Dr. Baker started out with the fact that he's an orthopedic surgeon and his lane was to fix knees and hips and do surgeries on people. And flat out, being overweight is a problem for people. It's not good for you. And we actually live in a time when doctors call that fat shaming. But we're just telling you the facts. The facts are that your knees and your hips will wear out faster if you're carrying a lot of weight. So most people on this call, most people in America, the majority in America would like to lose some weight, would like to do it healthily. Many people who specifically seek GoldCare really don't want to be on medications. We're really looking for other alternatives. So we're going to go back to Dr. Baker. And can you just start with real basic, what is a carnivore diet? I know a lot of us, do know the basics, but maybe let's just start there.
Yeah, I mean, it's first of all, let me just say that I, like you guys, don't necessarily tell everybody to go on a carnivore diet. I mean, I think it's reserved for certain instances. It's very effective for a lot of autoimmune and gut issues. I think that's its primary indication. But certainly people can use it to lose weight. They can use it to improve their metabolic health. Some people prefer the simplicity to it. I mean, a carnivore diet is basically a diet that consists of animal products. So, it's basically meat, eggs, fish, dairy products are one of those things that some people have to moderate, but that's basically it. So there's no fiber in the diet. There's no fruit, there's no vegetables, there's no grain. A lot of people obviously push back because of those things, because they're concerned about phytonutrients and fiber, particularly. They're also concerned about what impacts will it have on my, on my chances for heart disease. And so those are all valid concerns. Again, what I see is just about every single day, I see people that pursue this, and they're whatever disease I don't want to call it a panacea, but I've seen so many conditions improve. And I think the problem is, as you mentioned, part of it is our metabolic health, our gut health. I think that feeds into everything downstream of that. And whether it's, mental health disorders, autoimmune disease, inflammatory conditions, cancer, diabetes, heart disease, all of that seems to have its origin in that place. And so when you start reversing those things, we see a lot of good things happening. And so carnivore diet is simple. I mean, it's, eat a lot of meat and a lot of people use a lot of red meat. The thing that's interesting is because, and we've been told, to avoid, meat over the years, particularly red meat. And one of the concerns was saturated fat. Well, when you are no longer consuming carbohydrates, you have to have fat for fuel. As you mentioned, the 3 macronutrients. Protein is not a particularly good source of fuel. I mean, it's more structural based. You can convert, some amino acids into glucose and ketones, but primarily we're utilizing either our own body fat, which is, good if you're obese, or the fat we're consuming, which comes, naturally occurring in the foods we eat, and we now live in a time where we have ingredients that are cobbled together of various quality, and as Richard pointed out, these oils that we've sort of introduced in the diet about 150 years ago. And, there's a lot of people that feel that has been a real problem. And I think if you cut out these oils, you're going to cut out a lot of food that's garbage regardless.
Can you explain why the carnivore diet in particular, like you said, the patients you have particularly recommended for people with inflammation or autoimmune or gut, could you educate us on that?
Well, there's some good work by a fellow by the name Alessi Fasano out of Boston Children's, who's done a lot of work looking at the relationship between autoimmunity and gut hyperpermeability, so-called leaky gut syndrome, which, some people dispute whether that's a real entity or not. But that, is what we've seen over and over again when people, and there was a European group that was testing this for a number of years, and they would put these people on these carnivore style diets, measure their, they use something called PEG 400, polyethylene glycol 400, to see what their gut permeability was. And they saw as that resolved, the next thing they would see is a reduction in, serological markers, whether some of these autoimmune markers, and then they would symptomatically resolve. And so we see, the theory is here that autoimmunity starts in the gut, and a lot of it has to do with these foreign compounds that are entering past that semi-permeable membrane. And that's what's leading to downstream effects. And so when we, a lot of people get, there's a lot of people that notice that, for instance, fasting has a lot of benefits. We see a lot of people, they feel better when they fast. The problem is you can't do that forever. I mean, you've got to eat something eventually. And one of the things that I think most people fail to realize is when it comes to suitability to our human gut, meat is, it's very well suited to our anatomy and our physiology. I mean, we have a extremely acidic gastric pH. Our gastric pH rivals that of not only other carnivore animals, but scavenger animals like hyenas and vultures. We have a 1.5 gastric pH at rest. That was thought to be, evolutionary. The pressure was thought that, we were initially exposed to, meat that was been sitting out with a lot of bacterial contamination. So those that had the more robust stomach acid could survive and pass that on. If you look at, and I've talked to a lot of patients that have had colectomies, ileostomy patients. When you talk to them about, what's coming out of their ileostomy, they will say when they eat meat, it's all absorbed. It's 100% of it's absorbed. And this myth that, you've got all this meat rotting in your colon, is just complete nonsense. I mean, I know it'll be a little crude here, but I mean, when's the last time you went to the bathroom and you found a piece of meat floating around in the toilet? I mean,
Right.
Never. And if that ever happened, there's a real problem, right? That's a real problem. So we are anatomically and physiologically designed for meat as a fuel source. Now we can handle, and I would argue that humans are omnivorous for sure. I mean, there's 8 billion of us that mostly eat that way, but we're more efficient with meat. And I think that's something we go back to our very baseline. And a lot of people, they once they heal their gut, then they're able to, like maybe Richard does, add in a few more things. And I encourage that all the time. I get patients that may take them 6 months to a year to heal from their condition. And then we reintroduce foods as they desire. Some people don't want to do that. They're so happy with the way they feel. They're like, I don't need to do that.
Okay, so we're going to go back to Drew for a moment, and then we're going to start up with Dr. Amerling, because Dr. Amerling, I'd love to hear about your opinions about carnivore or keto kind of diet and, cognition. So back to you, Drew.
Thanks, Dr. Gold. Really looking forward to what Dr. Amerling has to say. Everything that Dr. Baker has said so far has just been spot on. Matter of fact, I had some lovely brisket burgers tonight here for dinner. So really appreciate that. Thank you guys for this great conversation. Don't forget to retweet this live stream. You can click the link in the bio of tonight's video that you're watching on your screen. Click retweet. We'd love to get as many people watching this as possible. And you can also learn a lot more about GoldCare there. Back to you, Dr. Gold.
So Dr. Amerling, can you share with us your opinion, your educated opinion on carnivore or keto, let's say, for cognitive effects? Like how does that, what are your impressions?
Sure. Well, Dr. Baker mentioned the principal, or you did, the principal sources, types of fuel that we have. And so among the three, in my view, fat is a superior fuel in several ways. First of all, when you oxidize fat in the mitochondria, you are generating far more ATP than you do when you oxidize, say, carbohydrates. You also generate significantly less CO2. And now, I don't care about CO2 in the atmosphere. I think CO2 in the atmosphere is a good thing. But if you are concerned about CO2 in the atmosphere, then you should go keto, because you want to be generating 30% less CO2 when you exhale than if you were on carbs. And when you burn carbs for energy, that requires insulin, first of all. Fat does not. So you do not trigger insulin release when you're eating fat. So it really is a superior form of energy. And saturated fat in particular is superior because there is a built-in mechanism when saturated fatty acids are oxidized in mitochondria that blocks the action of insulin to force cells to accumulate more energy in the form of fat. So in other words, saturated fat intake, in a way, prevents obesity. And this is one of the reasons why we all got obese when they went off saturated fat in the 80s. And when you burn fat, first of all, you have body fat. So if you don't eat for 6, 7, 8, 12 hours, you're still able to burn your body fat, and your body fat is virtually unlimited. You can live off your body fat for days and days and days, and you will not have the peaks and valleys of energy that you get when you are on a carbohydrate-based diet. Your glucose level goes up, the brain feels good for a while, then the glucose level starts to fall, the brain doesn't feel so good anymore. And this is one of the major problems with our current carb-based eating. It creates instability of energy supply in the brain. The brain needs energy 100% of the time. And if you have a deficiency of energy in the brain, you're going to start to feel it really rapidly. And in fact, one of the theories of dementia, Alzheimer's disease, is that it's poor energy utilization due to insulin resistance in the brain. Ketones overcome this. Ketones are taken up directly into the brain, past the blood-brain barrier easily, and can be utilized for energy by brain cells. In fact, they are the preferred substrate for energy of the brain and heart. And there have actually been experiments where people who were fat adapted, and in other words, in ketosis, were given a shot of insulin to drop their blood sugar down to seriously low levels, like 30 or so. And they were asymptomatic. This shows that the ketones support brain function independently of carbohydrates. And this idea that we need a certain amount of carbohydrates to fuel the brain is simply not supported by reality. Any carbohydrate that you need, your body can make from certain amino acids. So carbohydrates and glucose are non-essential.
Dr. Baker, I love that you came to this kind of from your own questioning for yourself. I actually think that's such a tried and true, honest medical approach. You became very interested in it for yourself and you kind of tested it out. So I'm curious about your experience personally and professionally, then learning about it. Did you notice cognitive impact? Like, did it improve your mood? Do you think it improved your ability to concentrate or anything in the cognitive area? Because you are really a strict carnivore.
I've always been fairly calm. I've never been a really labile person to start with, so it didn't really make a big difference as far as my mood lability or anything like that was concerned. I've always been an athlete. I've always taken care of myself. So, I mean, the benefits that I had were more along the lines of inflammatory for me personally. I mean, I noticed as a competitive athlete in my late 40s, almost 50s, I was feeling a little beat up, and then subsequent to that, switching the diet has basically largely resolved all of those things, which is nice because I'm now, as I'm pushing 60 now, I'm good to be able to still compete. I find that, this, and I think you're exactly right. And when we see these carbohydrate dependent metabolisms, that if we're not continually infusing those into our bloodstream with glucose infusions, then we do have these ups and downs and crashes. And a lot of people, they talk about, they even joke about, you go out to lunch and, you're falling asleep at 3 p.m. and that just doesn't happen. And so I have, I have pretty steady energy, pretty good ability to concentrate. I generally, and a lot of people talk about, they'll call it like a zero carb Zen or a carnivore calm, where they're just happy and chilled out. And I think that's, in direct contrast to a lot of people in our society. We have this society now where something like 1 in 5 or 1 in 4 people are diagnosed with some mental health disorder. That's a real problem. And I think the nutrition is playing a huge role. And we're seeing this play out in the kind of in the news, 24-hour news cycle. Now Kennedy's talking about, we can cure schizophrenia with a ketogenic diet. And I know all the principal players in there. I've been talking to these people for years about that. And we're absolutely seeing that. I mean, that's something, you asked me about my experience over the years. I have seen countless number of people with depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, even Tourette syndrome, ADHD, PTSD, dramatically improve their ability to function by changing diet, which I think, it shouldn't be a surprise to any of us who have a background in physiology that our brain is dependent upon nutrition, just like every other organ in our body is. But for some reason, we kind of, mental health disorders and cancer. I mean, these particular diseases have this special aura around them that how dare you suggest that nutrition could impact that when you're talking about diabetes, we talk about that all day, or heart disease. Yeah, nutrition, of course, it impacts that, but equally it impacts these other things as well. And I think, in fact, probably mental health disorders are probably one of the top 3 things I see carnivore diets benefiting, just because they're so common these days. Just like obesity is probably the most common thing I see, followed by things like diabetes, mental health disorders, and then arthritis. I mean, these are things I see all the time just because they're so endemic in the population.
I have a couple of questions, sort of just things that are occurring to me now. So do you think that it is obviously an easy diet to follow? I mean, it doesn't, it's animal products, right?
Well, it's simple. I wouldn't call it easy. It's simple.
Sorry, you're right. I'm saying it's not intellectually complicated to figure out what you could eat if you're eating carnivore. That's a more accurate way of saying it. Definitely. When I first heard about carnivore like 15 years ago, someone said, you can have bacon and eggs. I was like, that sounds awesome. But then I didn't realize you couldn't have the bread too. So I was like, I get it now. So yes, it's not so easy. But do you think that the compliance, obviously if you eat fat, everybody knows if you eat fat, you really do feel full longer. Do you think that contributes to being able to comply? Because I do know, I've been sort of surprised at a fair number of my friends who've gone on carnivore, and they say after 2 weeks or so, it's not so hard for them.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't happen for every person, but for many people, they will comment that their satiety is very high. We have this concept of satiety versus satiation. Satiation is the acute feeling of fullness after a meal, and satiety is a prolonged effect. And so it's very common for people to maybe eat 2 meals a day. I think it's the most common pattern I see. They're just not hungry. And when you're not hungry, it's pretty easy to lose weight. The problem we have, and this is why so many of these new drugs, the GLP-1s and the other incretin analogs are becoming so popular is because they impact that sort of satiety mechanism. And this is doing it in a way that, if we look at every other animal on planet Earth, none of them are sitting there with, apps and trackers, and, they're not worried about that. They just eat. And I think humans are no different than any other creature. There should be a baseline diet we can all eat and not get sick, or obese. I mean, that's just not our natural state. But yeah, satiety is a huge issue, and eating and fat. If we look, well, I mean, I will say this: if we, and I don't think this is even controversial, even the people that are dead against carnivore diets and high carb proponents, most people will recognize that carbohydrates, in particular refined carbohydrates, have profoundly minimal satiety. I mean, this is one of the situations where you just can't stop eating these things, like the potato chips, the Lay's potato chips, but you can't eat this one, and you can't, because they're not satiety producing. And they're also, they're engineered to be hyperpalatable, so you keep eating. They're addictive in many ways. And meat is just not that. It's good. I enjoy it. I enjoy the heck out of it. I mean, I never sat down to a bad steak, and I enjoy my food, but I'm not, constantly seeking out and craving it and thinking about it all the time. A lot of people, their whole day is thinking about this meal to the next meal to the next meal, and planning their weekend around meals. And this sort of takes that out of the equation for a lot of people.
With young people, let's say you've got parents who've got kids and they grew up in an era, and this is for either of you, they grew up in an era where we were told, I've got 2 sons, and we were told, oh, you have to bring snack to soccer, you have to bring, and so if you were a good, healthy mom, you brought orange slices, right? Instead of, something worse. So if you're eating carnivore and you're having more fat and more protein, can we just tell the parents, hey, little Johnny doesn't have to eat multiple times per day, like right in the 1 hour into the soccer match, into the 10-year-old or 12-year-old soccer match. I'm not talking like World Pro Cup here.
And I'm sure all of us probably experienced. When I was a kid, I remember I'd come home from school at 3 p.m. and I'd be hungry, and I'd say, "Mom, I'm hungry." She says, "Well, dinner's at 6. Go play." That's how we grew up. It's not a problem. I think we get into a point now, but the problem is, if you adapt somebody to having carbohydrates every 2 to 3 hours, then they do have a problem. Then they start crashing in energy and in performance, so you kind of set this sort of self-fulfilling prophecy up. So, if you start them out with feeding them satiety provoking, highly nourishing foods, they're not going to be as hungry as long. It's, for those people that have young kids or a bunch of kids at home, it's a great parenting hack. You just load these kids up on a lot of fat and protein, and then you don't got to hear from them for the rest of the day. That's what I would do. I'd kick my Saturday morning. These kids are loading up on bacon and eggs, and I would make, I'd make chaffle pancakes out of eggs and cheese, and load them up on that stuff. And I didn't hear, "Dad, I'm hungry," every 20 minutes, like we often do. So yeah, you can dispense with that, but you got to feed them the right food in the first place. You can't expect them just to go hungry if all they're eating is carbs, and expect them not to have a crash, because they will.
Dr. Amerling?
Yeah, absolutely. Sugar triggers not just insulin, but also catecholamines. Your sympathetic nervous system, your fight or flight hormones go up when you have a sugar load. And this is, I'm certain, one of the reasons why we're seeing these diagnoses of ADHD all over the place. Just the sugar high, and kids get wild and jittery, then they crash and burn, and then they go, they're up and down again. But I also remember, I'm older than both of you, and I remember very clearly when everybody was slim, almost no one was overweight. Overweight people stood out, and now the slim person stands out. Obesity has truly become normalized. It's a shocking state of affairs.
Okay, so I'm going to go to Drew again for just a moment, and then when we come back, I have a kind of a little bit of a political question to follow up with you on the carnivore issue and animal products. Drew.
Thanks, Dr. Gold. It's really cool seeing there's well over 3,000 people watching this live stream right now, and it's really cool seeing all the comments. Everyone is agreeing that carnivore is definitely the way to go. They feel really great. So I'm really energized and excited to hear that so many people have adopted this lifestyle, and it really is so simple. It remove all the junk and just get back to the basics. So love to hear it, and can't wait to hear what comes up next. Back to you, Dr. Gold.
Okay, so I just want to ask a couple of kind of quick questions because I just think our audience ends up getting very interested in us as people because it becomes more relatable. So for full disclosure, I've never really tried, I would say, to do a full-on carnivore diet. I have come close to it in terms of keto. And I say many years ago, long before I even really thought of the names of these things or read anything about it, I noticed, I called it, I don't know if you guys ever heard anybody say this, but I used to call it to myself, you shouldn't eat unopposed carbs. I kind of figured out that you just shouldn't eat carbohydrates by themselves. It just became very clear to me. There was no end in sight. You could just keep going forever. But maybe if you wanted a potato or something, it should be with a meal, like it should be with steak. So that was kind of how I thought of it. And there's no question, I will attest that there is no question that protein and fat, for me, for sure, is a healthier way. It keeps me full longer. It keeps me energized longer. You don't start thinking about food all day. You don't want to eat all day. You don't want to take, the carbs all day if you do that. So I think it is generally something almost everybody should look into, if not full carnivore, at least towards that, like Dr. Amerling, carnivore light. I'm curious for both of you, your opinion. I'm very interested, of course, and the reason we built GoldCare was to build a better way of serving patients, of putting patients in touch with doctors who will serve them by giving them good information. So here you are, Dr. Baker, as an orthopedist, and you're actually noticing that if you do something that's free, the surgeries would get canceled, which is actually very interesting. So love to know your perspective on the healthcare system for sure, but I'm going to put a pin in that for just a moment. I'm wondering if either of you are concerned politically about Americans and worldwide access to meat products, given the aggressiveness of people who think we shouldn't have access to meat products. Either one of you.
There does seem to be an agenda to get people unhealthy through eating, fake meat or non-meat products. And we absolutely must resist this with every fiber of our being. Our strength depends on our nutrition. If we don't have good sources of protein and fat for energy, our health will decline. This is what we've witnessed over the last 50 years. The national health has declined eating grains, processed junk. So we must fight back against this at every level.
Yeah. Dr. Baker?
Yeah, I don't think there's any compromising. I think, because we see these outrageous proposals in Oregon, they want to outlaw raising meat or hunting. That won't pass the legislature, but they hope to get a compromise. And, and so they inch by inch, they slowly boil the crabs. And so we have to say no. And not only that, we have to go on the offensive. And in my view, the U.S. is going to lead the charge here in this. I know right now we're kind of at odds with Europe politically, but I think this should not be a political issue. This should be a human rights, human flourishing issue. And, from my perspective, our national beef supply is a national security issue. And I think we need to invigorate it. We need to make it easier for these folks to do this grueling, very, very difficult job. These guys are out there, in Montana in January, dealing with, 3 feet of snow, out there with sick animals, trying to take care of them. So, yes, it is an issue. And we're seeing, particularly in Europe, more so than anywhere, probably is leading the charge around the sort of the green energy, green revolution type of stuff. And unfortunately, sort of the science doesn't even come close to supporting that cows are causing climate change or anything like that. That's complete nonsense. The reality on that is, the reality is meat is about a $1.5 trillion global market, and they want a piece of that. They want to, if you can go meatless Monday and eat alternative protein, that's $250 billion there. So it's a lot of money involved in this. And so all these supposedly altruistic reasons for eating, synthetic meat or plant-based meat are nothing more than a vehicle just to line somebody's pockets. It's not going to make anyone healthier. It's not going to save the planet. And, but it's going to be spending good for the GDP or something. Or, the U.S. GDP is based around healthcare in many ways. And so it'll just reinforce that, disaster that we can talk about for sure.
And cattle are really crucial for the environment. Not only are they not responsible for destroying the environment, they are a crucial part of the environment. They graze on these pastures. Grass is inedible by every other animal. they convert this inedible green stuff into luscious steaks. They are truly miraculous factories producing meat for our consumption. And they are, as I said, if you are eating a meat-based diet, you're producing 30% less CO2. So the environmentalists should get behind that.
I have to say, so up until COVID, I was I don't know, I was just very mainstream, very middle of the road. And now, I've heard some jokes and memes, now you kind of almost believe anything. But it is kind of concerning that there's a lot of powers that seem to be aligned actually against human beings, right? Yes. If it's healthier to eat these products, right? Less carbs, more fat, more protein. And, we saw during COVID, we saw such terrible policies. I am kind of concerned, and I'm just alerting the whole audience that this is something to keep your eye on, that the whole concept of eliminating meat, because we sometimes read articles like that, or, there's big agri farms that end up owning huge, amounts of cattle and land. And those things worry me. So I was just kind of wondering, Dr. Baker, if it worried you also. And I guess you're saying kind of does.
Yeah, for sure it does. I mean, we are starting to figure out, medically, that what is the solution to a lot of these problems. And a lot of the problems are very, a lot of the solutions to our health problems are simple nutrition and lifestyle modifications. And, now that we're starting to realize this, and all of a sudden they're saying, well, that's not going to be an option anymore, because we're going to, maybe we won't outlaw meat, but we'll make it cost prohibitive for many people. We'll regulate it so that it's tough to be a farmer or rancher, so you got a business, and we'll get that down one way or the other. And this is the thing, we look at the folks at, part of the Eat Lancet Commission, which is funded by the World Economic Forum, talking about that they are going to have people voluntarily, cut back on their meat. And if that doesn't work, well, the next step is we're going to force it. And I think I think they found that people aren't going to voluntarily stop. And so I'd be on the lookout for forcing the issue. And we do have to push back against that.
Yeah. And I want to share with people, forcing often just looks like, a mild bill in your state legislature or in Congress that doesn't sound as bad as it really will be. So pay close attention to this stuff, because it's going to be, I think it's going to be a real big battle over the next couple of decades. And you're hearing from doctors that have no incentive other than to give you good information that this is actually important for your health, is to reduce the carbs, certainly reduce the processed carbs for sure. And the protein and fat are really healthier fuels for your body. They're healthier in terms of reducing inflammation, which leads to perhaps reduced orthopedic surgical needs. That's for sure. Seems to really help you cognitively, mentally, perhaps even with diseases like Alzheimer's. There's just so many effects for this. And then the bigger picture, of course, which I know Dr. Baker's interested in, and Dr. Amerling and myself, which is just our whole healthcare in general, like our system, which doesn't seem to be oriented around giving patients unbiased, accurate information. What are your thoughts, Dr. Baker, just on the, I've said, Dr. Amerling and I agree, that's why we built GoldCare, that we know the system can't be fixed. It's absolutely not fixable. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think the incentives for physicians are really kind of perverse, actually. I think that, we are not incentivized to get people healthy. We're incentivized to disease manage them. I mean, I think that is, outside of acute trauma care and some of the surgical stuff, but in general, I mean, the system is in many ways supported by and maintained by the pharmaceutical industry, among others. As a surgeon, as an orthopedic surgeon, if I had a patient that I decided I wanted to do a knee replacement on, I have millions of dollars of resources at my disposal. An operating room that's $200 a minute. I've got an anesthesia team, a recovery room team, a radiology department, a lab department, millions and millions of dollars for me to get that outcome. But if I were to say, I think you should, let's work on your diet, sleep, exercise, I got nothing. There's nothing that is incentivized. And we could avoid, I think we could probably easily cut our spend on chronic healthcare if we just, prioritize these basic things, which we should. It'd be cheaper. It'd be a lot cheaper. You see all these people end up in the ER once a week, these mental health patients in the ER once a week. And all you do is you do this episodic care, hit them with, Haldol or something, Ativan and Haldol chill them out for a couple hours and then send them on their way the next day. I mean, we literally could have places where we just take these people and feed them for a while. I mean, as crazy as that sounds, we would probably save money if we did it that way. And physicians should understand how nutrition, not just, what is biotin deficiency going to give you, or the fact that, we've got pellagra and all these niacin deficiencies. We have to understand that nutrition actually can impact the course of disease. And as an orthopedic surgeon, I never learned any of that. There was nothing that would have told me, hey, if you eat a different way, your arthritis would get better. That's not in any of the orthopedic literature. I've never seen it. I discovered it on my own because, again, it doesn't make the money in the current system. I think we have to reform the system. I don't, and like you, I don't know if it's doable from within. So we have to go without, from the outside, and then hopefully patients will find, GoldCare, what we're doing, Rivero, as a better option for this type of medicine.
Dr. Amerling, please.
Yeah, about 30 or so years ago, medical profession and practice of medicine was taken over by this cult known as evidence-based medicine, which said, to summarize, that unless it's shown in a randomized controlled trial and published in a peer-reviewed journal, it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. Well, what about when you reverse somebody's type 2 diabetes by putting them on a keto or a carnivore diet? What does that count for? To me, that counts a lot more than these crappy randomized controlled trials that are produced by pharma for the most part. And we have to be able to parlay our clinical experience as physicians into useful information to help patients. And that's one of the things that I love about Dr. Baker, because he's done that. He's patient-focused, and he's seen the benefits in hundreds, if not thousands, of patients. These are decried as anecdotes by the EBM types. But when you have 100 anecdotes, that's serious data, and it should inform our practice.
I want to translate a little bit of what you just said, Dr. Amerling, for the audience. So Dr. Amerling is pointing out that it's become the norm in medicine for a few decades now that unless something has been published in a peer-reviewed journal, which a bunch of scientists have signed off on, it's just considered, quackery, unless it has met that threshold. But when you look into what it takes to get published in that format, it's very, very rigged system. I was more or less outside that system. I was absolutely a bedside clinician. That's why we started Frontline Doctors, because I was really at the bedside, like Dr. Baker was with his patients. I'm in the ER with my patients. And I wasn't paying as much attention to the academics as Dr. Amerling was. But once I dove in during COVID, I was horrified to learn how the medical journals are unbelievably rigged towards pharma. Not only does pharma fund the studies, they really are also funding or coercing and controlling the people that approve the studies that get published. There's a lot of politicking going on. This isn't just Dr. Gold saying this and Dr. Amerling saying this. There's many books written on this. Marcia Angel wrote it. She's a former New England Journal of Medicine editor-in-chief, and she talked about it. Dr. Blauzet, from the former French health minister. There's a lot of people who have documented this, that to get published in the particular way that then becomes common accepted practice in medicine is really kind of a rigged system, and that the doctor in front of you who's seeing patients, which was always the way we learned about good things, right? There'd be a doctor who's noticing something in his or her practice, said, this is interesting, and would talk about it, and then it would go from there. That has kind of disappeared. So what we do at GoldCare is we listen to the doctors who are taking good care of their patients, and Dr. Baker would be an example of that, Dr. Amerling. But I wanted just to explain the difference to the audience. We would welcome reading high quality medical journals. It's just that they are extraordinarily, and I don't think you can even find any journals that aren't funded by big pharma. I actually don't think they exist. So that's where we are. So we bring it back to the doctor and the patient, and we try to do what's best for the patient and give you, the patient, the best information by putting you face to face with doctors who are actually seeing patients and caring about their patients. Dr. Baker, any kind of closing thoughts for the audience? Really anything about carnivore, keto, nutrition. I appreciate everything you said, but just, I really, this is the opportunity. People at GoldCare, I don't think have heard this subject exactly like this before. So.
Well, yeah, I think that if you are treating a chronic disease, you are probably treating a nutrition problem, at least in part. And I think if you cannot fix the nutrition for the patient, you're going to struggle to have a good result. I mean, yes, you might add more pills and so on and so forth. But I think, again, we fail to ask why people are sick. Our sort of paradigm is, let's make the diagnosis and how do I treat it? And if we'd step back and say, well, why are you sick in the first place? We might be able to figure this out. And we have so many quote unquote idiopathic diseases out there. And it's because we don't want to consider what the problem is, because then, maybe they could fix it on their own perhaps. And so I tell patients that, the healthcare system can be very, not only depressing, but disempowering for many people, because, you get a disease diagnosis. We don't know why it happened. Maybe they'll say it's genetics, bad luck. We don't really know. And then what is the solution? Well, now you're dependent upon some stranger to give you pills for the rest of your life. And I don't think that's a very good solution. It's very depressing. And so I want people to know that if they're suffering from illness, there's a lot you can do. There's a lot you can do on your own. You need you might need a good team to help get you there. And I'm sure you guys probably do quite a bit of that. And you should be empowered, and you've got the most skin in the game. As much as, as all of us are physicians, we care about our patients, but if you're seeing, I would see, 5,000 patients a year as an orthopedic surgeon. I couldn't care about every one of them as much as you care about yourself. So you got to keep the skin in the game. You have to, you can't outsource your health to anyone else. You can have consultants and partners and helpers, but you got to be responsible for that. And you can make huge differences. I've seen so many people that were just, at the end, basically everything was gone, and they've turned it around and they've totally changed their life around. So it's possible.
You're singing, Richard, 1 second. You're singing my song. That's what we're here to do. We're here to help you empower yourself. Nobody cares about your health as much as you do. No doctor will ever care as much about your health as you do. And so you have to advocate for yourself, and we're here to give you great advice. Dr. Amerling.
Yeah, Dr. Baker is absolutely right. The vast majority of disease today is due to diet-related metabolic dysfunction, metabolic syndrome, and readily reversible by going on a proper diet, of which carnivore is one example. And if patients want to get healthy, they have to get rid of these toxins that are being ingested in huge amounts now, like seed oils and sugars that are foreign to our bodies. These are new compounds that we are not used to handling, and we can't handle them. They are extremely toxic. 95% of what you find in a supermarket is laden with seed oils and sugar. So the first thing we need to do is get rid of those things, stop eating all the time, and then we can talk about what diet is best for you and get you on that diet and get you eating healthy and get you healthy again.
The reason we built GoldCare, this is for everybody, I'm talking to you. We built it so that you will come for your own health, for the nation's health. We need strong, healthy citizens so that we can, be a happy, productive, constructive society. But even if it's just about yourself, your own selfish interest to keep yourself as healthy as possible for yourself and your family, this is why we built GoldCare. We built it to give you good information. I don't know what else we can do. We're welcoming you. If you go to goldcare.com/Dr. Gold, it's on us. It's on GoldCare for a month. You can check it out. You'll be able to watch this Carnivore Diet Townhall again. You'll be able to watch, we have hundreds and hundreds of hours of video. And I want to thank our two experts tonight, Dr. Amerling, Dr. Baker, and we'll see you next month. But back to Drew first.
Thanks, Dr. Gold. Yes, Dr. Baker, Dr. Amerling, thank you guys so much for the great conversation. I took a ton away from this. We learned so much about conventional nutritional advice, just issues with chronic health, inflammation, and really how the carnivore diet does support all of these issues that our country has fallen down with this inverted food pyramid and just the craziness behind it. So thank you guys for that. Like Dr. Gold said, this town hall and hundreds of other past live stream events and educational videos are available inside GoldCare. Super simple. Click the link in the bio. It's goldcare.com/Dr. Gold. We're happy to give you 30 days free. Come check us out. I know you're going to love it. Just have to give us a try. No skin off your back, and we're happy to be here for you. On March 3rd, we'll be back for our next town hall. This is a 2-part series where we are dissecting health insurance, the lies behind it, and how you can take full control of your healthcare. God bless you, and good night.
Do you feel like the healthcare system is failing you? That's because it is, working exactly as intended to prioritize profits, bureaucracy, and big pharma, while leaving you and your family vulnerable when you need care the most. We understand your frustration. You've been asked to trust a system that feels rushed, impersonal, and biased. You deserve better. That's why we created GoldCare. Here, your values matter, your choices matter, and most importantly, you matter. GoldCare is more than a solution. It's a revolution. Trusted by over 10,000 members nationwide, we've built a system that puts your wellness first. With ethical, independent doctors who work for you, not the system, you'll have access to care that's transparent, trustworthy, and aligned with your values. We understand that stepping away from the familiar can feel daunting, but staying in a system that doesn't truly serve you is even harder. That's why GoldCare offers a healthcare alternative designed to work for you. Whether you're ready to step away from the system entirely or prefer to keep your insurance while seeking the transparent care, ethical doctors, and education you deserve, it's time to stop trusting a system that's failed you. Take control of your health with GoldCare. Join today for $17 a month and become part of a healthcare revolution. GoldCare, built for you, powered by freedom, trusted by thousands.